My fiancé cheated on me with my brother the day we got engaged. Now they're in a coma and my parents want me to raise their baby. 4 days ago, out of the blue, my family reached out to me after 2 years of complete silence. That silence started the day my fiancé cheated on me with my own brother on the night we got engaged. It was chaos, and cutting ties with all of them felt like the only sane thing to do. For some background, the three of us, Kim, my ex-fiancé, Ron, my brother, and I all went to school together. We'd known each other forever. Kim and I were in the same graduating class, and Ron was just 2 years behind. Growing up, Ron and I had always been close, part of the same friend group, which meant Kim and Ron were friends too. Back in high school, I asked Kim to prom during my senior year, and that's when we started dating. Things just kept progressing naturally. We even got into the same college, and by the time I proposed, we'd been together nearly 7 years. She said yes, and we got engaged. To celebrate, I threw a small party that very evening. We kept it intimate, just our families and a few close friends, and planned to announce it online the next day. I was so caught up in the excitement that I didn't notice much of what was going on around me. I didn't see Ron sulking or faking smiles. I missed him sneaking out to the backyard for a smoke. And it never occurred to me that Kim had been in the bathroom for far too long. When I finally realized Kim had been gone for more than 10 minutes, something in my gut told me something was off. I checked the bathroom first. She wasn't there. That's when a sick feeling hit me, and I decided to look outside. Thank God I did, because that's where I saw the truth that saved me from marrying the wrong person. Through the backyard door, I caught my brother making out with my fiancée. It was like time froze. I stood there, stunned, for a few moments before I could even process what I was seeing. Then I snapped and yelled, which finally made them stop. They tried to pretend like it wasn't what it looked like, but the damage was already done. I saw everything. I walked back into the house, completely overwhelmed. They were behind me, probably trying to explain or make excuses, but I couldn't hear a word. I had zoned out completely. When we got to the living room, I didn't wait for any explanations. I turned to everyone and told them flat out what had happened, that the engagement was off, because Kim had just proven she was a liar and a cheat, and Ron clearly had no loyalty to his own family. Kim burst into tears, and Ron tried to console her, which only made things worse. I told them both to leave. At that point, Kim and I were living together, but the lease was in my name. Even though we split rent, it was technically my place. Still, she argued that she wasn't going anywhere because, in her words, she hadn't done anything wrong. That stunned me. I mean, kissing your fiancé's brother during your engagement party seemed pretty wrong to me. But Kim started justifying herself, saying that she'd only agreed to date me back in high school because she needed a prom date. She thought she loved me in college, but after graduation, she realized she didn't. Instead, she had developed feelings for Ron. Living together apparently made her understand that we were too different. According to her, I was some kind of work-obsessed control freak who didn't know how to enjoy life. I had no clue where that was coming from. I work normal hours, and I've always made time for my personal life. As for being fun, I've never thought of myself as boring. And those accusations of being controlling or possessive? That was news to me. I honestly think she just needed a way out, so she made up reasons in her own head and started believing them. Then she told me she'd been venting to Ron about our relationship problems for years, and somewhere along the way, she started falling for him. They weren't officially together, she claimed, but getting engaged to me made her realize she couldn't go through with it. Apparently, when Ron looked upset and left the room, she saw it as a sign, followed him outside, and they confessed everything to each other. That's when they kissed for the first time, or so they claimed. They both insisted the only reason they hadn't done anything before was because they didn't want to hurt me. Kim said she never thought Ron would cross that line since he loved his brother, and Ron believed Kim was in love with me. But once they had that backyard heart-to-heart, they realized they were in love with each other. That's why Kim now wanted to break off our engagement and pursue something real with Ron. Everyone at the party was speechless. I was completely humiliated. Her parents, to their credit, seemed genuinely ashamed and apologized to me. They told Kim she was free to make her choices, but they wanted nothing to do with her for the time being. My parents, on the other hand, were a different story. They actually took Kim and Ron's side. They told me I shouldn't be so hurt, it was normal for people to fall out of love, and I needed to move on. What shocked me most was that they expected me to support Kim and Ron's new relationship like it was no big deal. When I tried to explain how insane that sounded, they got annoyed and told me I'd always been difficult. They said it wasn't surprising Kim chose Ron over me, since he was more relaxed and easier to get along with. They even claimed they never thought my relationship with Kim would last, because she was more compatible with Ron anyway. At that point, I genuinely started to wonder if my entire family had gone completely insane. I was too angry and heartbroken to keep arguing. All they wanted to do was celebrate that Kim and Ron had finally found each other. I wouldn't be surprised if they had known about Ron's feelings all along. And somehow, they still tried to pin the blame on me like I was the reason everything fell apart. It felt like everyone was just taking Kim's side, acting like everything she had said about me was somehow the truth, which apparently made what she did completely justifiable in their eyes. Thankfully, my friends were nothing like that. They stood by me. A couple of them even helped me pack up some of my things, and one of them offered me a place to crash for a few weeks. I couldn't stomach the thought of going back home right then. I wish I could say that after that disastrous engagement night, I never had to face any of them again. But that wasn't the case. I'd lived in that house for years, pretty much since I graduated, so I had to return multiple times to get all my stuff. One evening wasn't nearly enough. Kim did return the portion of rent I'd already paid for that month, but each time I showed up to pack, Ron was there too. He never missed a visit, and seeing him beside her every single time just stirred up more pain and frustration than I knew what to do with. After I got everything back, the money, the ring, the last of my things, I decided that was it. I was done with both of them. I had still been talking to my parents on and off during those first few weeks, though I couldn't wrap my head around how they were genuinely supporting Ron. They kept saying that if Kim wasn't happy with me, it was her right to choose someone else, and if that someone happened to be Ron, then it wasn't exactly wrong for him to reciprocate. According to them, if they truly loved each other, none of the betrayal mattered, not the cheating, not the backstabbing, because love justified it all. They were determined to support their relationship, no matter how badly it had hurt me. They wouldn't stop repeating all the things Kim had accused me of, saying I was controlling, too focused on work, not fun, and emotionally distant. I didn't want to believe any of it, but hearing it over and over started getting in my head. I began questioning myself. So, I turned to a few longtime friends. These were people who had known me and Kim since high school. They had nothing to gain by lying, so I trusted them to be honest. When I asked them straight up if any of it was true, they shot it down completely. They told me Kim was just making things up to make herself feel better about cheating. They reminded me that I had a healthy relationship with work, no more obsessive than anyone else. I wasn't boring, either. Maybe I wasn't the loudest guy in the room like Ron, but I knew how to relax and have a good time. And most importantly, they insisted I had never been possessive or controlling. It became clear to me then Kim and my family had been trying to gaslight me into believing I was the problem, just to justify their betrayal. Eventually, I stopped talking to all of them. I cut contact with my family too. I heard through the grapevine that Ron and Kim got married about a year after everything went down. It was a small, quiet ceremony. When I found out, I felt nothing. Another year passed after that, and I've been totally cut off from my family for nearly 2 years now. And you know what? I've done really well. I've traveled, grown, and lived freely. I haven't felt like I missed out on a thing. But then, just last week, my mother suddenly called. I ignored the call and blocked the number. She didn't give up. She started using a different number, and even when I figured out it was her again, I still didn't answer. But she kept calling every few minutes, non-stop. After nearly 4 hours of this, I finally gave in and called her back. I was irritated, ready to tell her off. But the moment she picked up, she was crying uncontrollably. I was caught off guard. I hadn't expected that at all. So instead of lashing out, I paused and asked what was going on. That's when she told me Ron and Kim had been in a horrible accident. A truck had crashed into them, and both of them had slipped into comas. Their condition was critical. Even with everything they had done to me, I felt a wave of sympathy. That kind of suffering? No one deserves it. I told my mom to hang in there, that I was genuinely sorry to hear about what happened. She was sobbing so hard she could barely speak, so she passed the phone to my dad, who was a little more composed. He told me they were calling to ask if I could come visit to support them during this crisis. At first, I didn't understand what kind of support they meant. I mean, Ron and Kim had health insurance. It wasn't about money. Emotionally, they had each other. And they hadn't reached out to me in 2 years, so I didn't see why I'd suddenly be the person they needed now. But then my dad clarified, and that's when everything turned upside down. Apparently, Kim and Ron had a baby, a 2-month-old son, and they wanted me to help take care of him. I was stunned. I had no idea Kim had even been pregnant. Turns out, they kept the whole thing under wraps. Kim and Ron had been living in Oklahoma while he worked on a project there, and they decided to stay throughout the pregnancy. Since they had some family and close friends nearby, they managed everything privately. Her family even flew in for the birth. They hadn't told anyone else, they planned to announce it once they returned. But just a couple of weeks after coming back, the accident happened. I didn't know what to say. I felt completely numb. My dad told me they'd hired a temporary sitter, but now they needed to figure out a long-term plan, especially since the doctors had given Kim and Ron a 50-50 chance of surviving. So my dad called me to say that just in case the worst happened, they wanted me to help raise the baby. He thought the best course of action was for me to start bonding with the child now. I was floored. That was the last thing I ever expected to hear. I told him immediately that there was no way I was doing that. Everything about the request was outrageous. I didn't want to be involved. But instead of understanding, he got angry. He started yelling, saying I was being selfish and immature. He told me this wasn't about me, it was about Kim and Ron, who were in comas, fighting for their lives. He said the family needed me now, and most importantly, my nephew needed me. He told me to let go of the past and show up for the people who were hurting. It's not like I turned them down out of spite or because I'm clinging to some old grudge. I said no because, honestly, the whole thing feels incredibly strange. I only found out I even had a nephew a few days ago, and now I'm suddenly expected to form a bond with him as if I'd known him all along and consider raising him if things go south with his parents. That's a lot to ask of anyone, let alone someone who was blindsided like I was. And let's be real, his parents? That's a whole other can of worms I'm not ready to open. I'm still dealing with all kinds of emotions, and the truth is, I just don't want to see anyone from my family right now. My head's a mess, and I don't think it's healthy for me to step into a situation where I'm supposed to act like some kind of emotional anchor while the baby might lose both his parents. I can't explain it perfectly, but I just know I'm not in the right place for that kind of responsibility. My parents keep telling me that I'm being unfair. They keep pushing me to go to the hospital, to meet the baby, to be there for the family. And all their pressure has me feeling like a complete jerk. I genuinely don't know what to do anymore. I keep wondering, am I the bad guy for not wanting to visit my nephew while his parents are in critical condition? Update 1. First of all, thank you to everyone who took the time to comment and offer advice. As for why Ron and Kim kept the pregnancy a secret, I honestly still have no clue. Maybe they just wanted to keep things private for a while. That's their business, I guess. Still, finding out about their kid hit me hard. I mean, it's only been a couple of years since everything blew up, and now they're married with a baby? It was a lot to process, but I think I've finally come to terms with it. Even so, I think staying away is the best choice for me right now. I know this situation isn't about me. I know they've been in a terrible accident, and I do truly hope they recover and return to their lives. I really mean that. My thoughts are with them, because my parents need them, and that baby needs them most of all. I just don't think I'm the right person to step in right now, especially not after everything that's happened. And let's be honest, this baby's mother used to be the love of my life. How would I even begin to build a healthy relationship with her child? It wouldn't be fair to him, or to me. Most of the comments I've read here helped validate my decision to stay away. They reminded me that I'm not obligated to drop everything and be there, especially when they already have other people supporting them. But I don't have that same support system. I've got to be there for myself. I've stopped answering my parents' calls and texts. Honestly, I don't even know what I'd say to them. I've tried explaining how I feel, but they don't understand. I don't think they ever really have. So I've decided to stay silent until I absolutely can't anymore. I have a life to live, and a job to do, and I'm hoping staying busy will help keep my mind off all this chaos. Update 2. Well, my parents finally had enough of being ignored. Today, they showed up unannounced. I hadn't answered their calls in 2 weeks, and I guess they decided to take matters into their own hands. It's the weekend, so I couldn't even escape to work. I had no choice but to talk to them. And while I'm glad something useful came out of the conversation, I'm still not thrilled about how the whole thing went down. They arrived early in the morning, and the second they walked in, they cut straight to the chase. No small talk, no easing into it, they just demanded to know why I was avoiding them. They accused me of being selfish for leaving them to deal with everything alone. According to them, what happened 2 years ago wasn't right, but it was inevitable because Kim and Ron loved each other. And I should be thankful that I found out the truth on the day of the engagement and not after a wedding had already taken place. They didn't express any real remorse for supporting Ron and Kim. Instead, they acted like I was the one who needed to grow up and move on. They said that even if I felt betrayed, now wasn't the time to act like I was the victim. Kim and Ron had suffered a terrible accident, and I needed to put all of that behind me and show up for the family. They said I was being cold and heartless for not forgiving them after something so tragic. I couldn't believe it. It felt like they were trying to guilt me into forgiveness because Kim and Ron had been hurt, like their accident somehow balanced out what they'd done to me. I didn't respond right away. I let them speak without interrupting, partly because I didn't want to get into another screaming match and partly because I was still trying to absorb how warped their reasoning was. Eventually, they started hinting again that I should try building a relationship with my nephew, just in case I had to step in and raise him. That's when I couldn't stay quiet anymore. I finally cut in and told them flat out, even in the most far-fetched hypothetical situation where I agreed to take on that role, it would still feel unbelievably wrong. Visiting a child and trying to bond with him under these circumstances, pretending like I'm his future guardian when I've only just found out he exists, it's bizarre. It doesn't sit right with me. And honestly, what if Kim and Ron recovered and then suddenly decided they didn't want me involved with their child at all? What then? I'd already start forming a bond with my nephew, get emotionally attached, and then it would all be taken away like it never mattered. That thought alone made everything feel even more wrong. Plus, it really rubbed me the wrong way that my parents were already acting like Kim and Ron were gone. Sure, the doctors had said there was a 50-50 chance, but that also meant there was still a 50% chance they'd survive and recover. Shouldn't that give the family some kind of hope? Instead of being by their side at the hospital, my parents were here arguing with me, trying to guilt-trip me into playing savior, and I just couldn't wrap my head around why they thought that was helpful. So I told them, flat out, that they'd be better off heading back to the hospital and spending time where it actually mattered. But they didn't take that well. They seemed offended, like I was accusing them of neglect, and fired back saying they had only come to me because they believed I was the only one capable of giving my nephew the love and care he deserved, just like my brother had done for me once upon a time. They tried to sweeten it by saying that if Kim and Ron pulled through and found out I had stepped in to help, they'd be grateful. But even as they said that, I could tell they didn't believe it themselves. And honestly, why would they? Kim and Ron hadn't spoken to me in 2 years. We didn't part ways with any kind of peace or resolution, and neither of them had ever tried to make amends. I highly doubted they'd be thrilled to find me playing Uncle of the Year all of a sudden. So I gave them my final answer. I told them I wasn't going to visit, at least not right now. I needed time to process my own emotions and make peace with how I was feeling. I knew nobody else cared about how I felt, but I did. I had stayed out of their lives without making any trouble, and now I expected the same respect in return. I was fully prepared for another round of arguments, but surprisingly, they didn't push back. I think they finally got the message. They said they'd still be waiting for me to show up eventually, and I told them not to expect much. Before they left, I made sure to say that I truly hoped Kim and Ron would recover. I meant it, I didn't want anyone to think I was cold or heartless. I even handed them a box of chocolates I'd bought a few days earlier as a thank you gift for a friend. In that moment, it felt more meaningful to give it to them. I told them it was the best I could offer, and that they could pass it along to Kim and Ron when they woke up. After they left, I felt strangely lighter. Like I'd been holding in a breath for years without even realizing it. Update 3. It's been almost 6 months since I last shared anything here, and I figured I owe an update, especially for those of you who've been following along and offering support. So, here's what happened. Kim and Ron pulled through. A couple of weeks after my parents came by, they started to regain consciousness and eventually made a full recovery. What might surprise you is that I actually ended up visiting them at the hospital before they came around. I also met my nephew. It wasn't easy. Seeing them lying there, unconscious and hooked up to machines, it brought up a lot more emotion than I expected. And seeing the baby? That was the hardest part of all. But I'm glad I did it. Something about that visit gave me a kind of closure I didn't realize I needed. A few months after that, I got a message from both Kim and Ron. They said they were grateful that I came to see them and met their son. And after nearly 2 years, they finally apologized. They said they wished things had gone differently between us. Now, I wouldn't go so far as to say I've forgiven them. That wouldn't be honest. I don't think I'm there yet, and maybe I never will be. But I have accepted what happened. I've made peace with it in my own way. And really, that's probably all they can hope for from me at this point. I told them I appreciated their message, and that was that. We haven't talked since. And honestly, I'm okay with that. That's exactly how I want things to be. I've created a life that doesn't involve them, and I'm content. On a more personal note, I've recently started seeing someone. And this time, it feels different. After a few short-term flings and casual things over the last couple of years, this is the first time I've felt something real again. Strong, mutual, grounded. I really believe it could turn into something long-term. I'm hopeful for the first time in a long while. So if you've made it this far, thank you for caring. It means more than you know.